Alright guys, we're back here with another Mystical Features video where we today will be talking about Rake, The Rake. I know a lot of people have heard of it, maybe you didn't, but we're going to go ahead and jump into it and explain what The Rake is. So, in the summer of 2003, events involving a strange human-like creature sparked local media interest. While covering the human-like creature, the local media had a blackout and unfortunately little to no information was left intact. Most of the online written accounts of the creature were mysteriously destroyed. Some of the sightings that were reported primarily in ritual areas like New York State or even Idaho states that they encounter a creature of unknown origins. Emotions range from extremely traumatic levels of fright and discomfort. Unfortunately, the published versions are no longer on record. However, some of the people that reported the sightings began to look for answers. The people who band together accumulated nearly 2 dozen documents dating between the 12th century and present day, spanning across 4 continents, and with most of the cases they gathered, the stories were identical. Now, we're going to take a dive into some actual logs about the rake here in a minute. But first, let's talk about what the rake is. Now, like we mentioned earlier, the rake is like a human like creature but has a animal like posture, sort of kind of like a small bear. The rake looks like a skinny humanoid being with long limbs and hollow eyes. Reports claim that it even looks like a hairless dog. People claim that the rake can stand up to 6 feet tall, but usually moves on all fours. It says that the rake has claw like nails that can easily tear you to shreds. It says that the creature has a blink like face, but has a glow in its eye socket. The rake appears to lurk in deep forest areas and even sometimes invade people's homes. Alrighty, so we got some logs pulled up about people actually reporting seeing the rake or something identical to the rake. So we're going to start with a marinates log. This one was documented in 1691, and it says, "He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed, I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not come here again at the request of the rake." Next journal we have that was translated from Spanish is just called a journey or journal entry in 1880, and it says, "I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand. I will not sleep." His voice and the rest of the text is illegible to read. Next, we have a suicide note, and this one was in 1964. "As I prepare to take my life, I feel it's necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone or other than him. For once I awoken and felt his presence, and once I awoken and saw his form. Once again I awoken and heard his voice, and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear or what I might next awake to experience. I can even wake goodbye." Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and one loose personal letter with no envelope. "Dearest Lionel, I may have said that wrong. I've prayed for you. He spoke your name." And that is the end of the suicide note journal entry. Okay, so this next log is pretty long, but I'll try to get through it as fast as I can. So let's start with 3 years ago. I had just returned from a trip to Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids straight to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used this moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he was out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from the end of the bed so quickly his knees almost knocked me out of the bed. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for half a second, I was able to see what caused his strange reaction. At the foot of the bed, sitting and facing away from us, was what appeared to be a naked man or a large hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned at its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked in a fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motions, it scrambled across the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flannel sort of right along the covers until it was less than a foot from my husband's face. It was completely silent for about 30 seconds, probably closer to 5, but it seems like a while, just looking at my husband, and then placed its hand on his knees and ran into the hallway leading to the kids' rooms. I screamed and ran for the lights switch, planning to stop this thing before it hurt my children. When I got into the hallway, the lights from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over about 20 feet away. It turned around and looked directly at me covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter, Clara. The creature ran down the stairs as my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke only once more in her short life. She said, "He is the rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughters to the hospital. They did not survive. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspapers took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house after we decided to return home. I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and talked about our experience. He knew two other people in New York who had seen the creature we now refer to as the rake. It took the four of us 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believe to be the account of the rake. None of them gave us any details, history, or follow up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages, then never mentioned it again. A ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only they were told to leave by the rake. The last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to. My daughter included. This led us to wonder if the rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night, every night for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around on my bed each day. When I woke up, by the end of the second week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep while blurring through recordings at 8 times the normal speed. It still took almost an hour every day. On the first day of the third week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the rake. I can't listen to it long enough to begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is that I heard it before, and I believe that it spoke when I was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason, the voice of the recorder immediately brought me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head made me very upset. I have not seen the rake since he ruined my life. but I know that he's been in my room while I slept. I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to see him staring at me again. And that is the end of that log. The rake sparked internet debates about the existence of the being. Is there such a thing of the rake? Is he really out there? Is there something really mystical lurking in the forest? The rake creepypasta gains so much popularity now that there's people making arts and even video games of the rake. We have so much evidence to, prove that there's something out there. But if it wasn't the rake, what could it be? As time goes forward, we may find out sooner than you know. So that is it for the rake. We are done with another mystical feature video. I did hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what we should talk about next. And with that being said, you guys take it easy. You guys stay safe. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Goodbye.